I want people to step back for a second and kind of just, even if you're not in the entertainment industry, why you should care, right? Because we're dealing with workers, and we're taping this on the historic day that UPS workers have, thanks to the Teamsters, reached a historic deal, the best deal that they said they could get that actually gives them a living wage, right? So that you see that happening at UPS, you see Amazon workers, you see Starbucks workers. But I think people need to know what they're up against, right, Rafael? And when you talk about these giants, Bob Iger, the head of Disney, when we talk about David Zaslav, the head of Warner Brothers, when we talk about Sarandos and Hastings, the head of Netflix, just so people have context, these folks make hundreds of millions of dollars. Zaslav made about $500 million, folks, in the past 5 years. Iger about $250 million. Same thing with the Netflix guys. And I want to give you a quote, Rafael, and I want your response to this.
Sure.
As you mentioned, the struggle just to survive, just to work, just to literally pay your bills, because we eat what we hunt, right? So there's feast and there's famine, as you know. Here's a quote from Bob Iger, the head of Disney. While this was happening, he said that he finds it to be very disruptive. He finds it to be unhelpful. And he also said he finds the strike to be disturbing. Iger made $27 million last year. He just got his contract renewed till 2026. Allegedly, it was Bob Iger who also said this, and this is his quote, allegedly, to a trade. The end game is to allow things to drag on until union members start losing their apartments and losing their houses. Another insider called it a cruel but necessary evil. Your response, sir?
Look, I think what the AMPTP is trying to do now is to take people who've already been taken advantage of and scare them into feeling that it could get worse and not better, and make that fear overweigh our conviction. And the reality is that we as artists are used to living on the edge, so that doesn't really intimidate us. But there is a moral stance here. And I think, when a lot of people think about Hollywood, they think about the 1% of Hollywood, not the Teamsters, not IATSE, not the thousands and thousands of people who you'll never know who actually make this machine run. Not just the actors, but most people can't name their favorite writers of their favorite movies. They can name all the movies, but they can't name the writers. Those people are not rich people. They are very, very middle class people, and they're trying to even get a mortgage. I mean, the idea that he thinks we're losing our houses. They don't have houses.
You're like, we're renting.
What are you talking about? But we also, you think of that kind of a threat and you realize how out of touch millionaires are with with regular working class people. And that notion, that unbelievable apathy is a part of what we're also fighting here. It's not about actors. It's not about writers. It's about people who run this country, who work to actually run it. Not the people who take credit for it, but the actual working class people that make this country run, saying, hey, I'm all for capitalism. I don't want unchecked capitalism. I don't want there to be an insane top and an unlivable bottom. No one's arguing for, well, I don't know. Sometimes I'm like, fuck billionaires, give us all that money back. But, I don't think anything that's being said on the union level is even remotely approaching unreasonable. And to be told by anyone who has that kind of wealth that anyone sort of on within the unions are being unreasonable is just a representation of their level of out of touchness with the regular, the average person. And it would be amazing to me if somebody did this, it's like the head of UPS did this and was like, our workers are trying to live their lives. They're being unreasonable. It's like, who are you talking about? You're talking about the person that delivers our mail. We love these people. We see these people. Those are people like us. And so I think we're just approaching a moment here where it is so much more useful for us to look at all of these seemingly separate industries and see that there is a common thread taking place between them. And just, there's some loud press around Hollywood people because there's some faces that you recognize, but the symptom and the circumstance is fundamentally the same. And so we're just reaching a point as a country where the philosophical question is, do we all think that we should all get to have a decent living and live lives where we're not just in survival mode? And that's a question that just these generations are really going to have to start asking ourselves, and what we're willing to do to push back upon a system that, if left unchecked, creates mega billionaires and then a class of people that are struggling to just put food on the table. And I don't think that's the America that anybody wants.
I mean, it's an America that is our reality currently, and it is also a recipe for disaster. You know, the fact is that what has made America as a country, what has set us aside from other nations, is the fact that we've had a robust middle class, right? And a robust middle class only comes from investment in, social safety nets and investment and the concerted effort that we have made to say that the least among us should be helped, right?
Yeah,
like
absolutely.
That's why we have homeless shelters. That's why we have, different agencies that are about protecting, the least right among us. And when you look to other countries, when I've traveled around the world, I'm like, oh, this is what America would look like if people would be bathing in the fountain, on a regular basis. And when I traveled through India and putting up babies to cars, and I'm like, because the level of poverty was unchecked because the fucking wealth, right, was out of control and unchecked. And I think that the reality here is that you have these very oppressive forces at the top, whether we're looking at politics writ large or you're looking at the politics of certain industries, that have been allowed to say that you don't have, and that's because you've made poor choices. You see, we don't actually look at the systems that created the lack of choices that people are faced with. It's like, oh, if you're a multi-billionaire, you're a genius and you've done all the right things, right? But if you are poor or working class, that's your fault. You've just made a series of bad decisions. And so I wonder, please go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, I mean, it's classic victim blaming, right? And it's this weird, we've done this sort of horrible addictive thing with entertainment in the last maybe decade or two, where we've decided that really, really wealthy people are worth worship more so than ever. And so we put them on this superhero pedestal, when really the way we should look at people that are that wealthy is with extreme skepticism. How could you possibly have acquired that much money while actually doing right by the people that helped you get there? And every time we've peeled back the curtain, what have we seen? We've seen there's some where we're shipping work to another country where they can get around taking care of people who are working on their products. We've seen child labor. Like, these are things that we've had to then come in and morally object to and punish companies for doing so that they'd stop doing it. And a lot of those companies are still around today only because we checked them and got them to stop doing it. But like, a lot of the people that are in the conversation now that are the heads of the AMPTP, let's not forget who the fuck this is. This is Amazon and Apple. You want to pull those receipts on like how they are with people around the world, how they are with their workforces? Amazon's been trying to bust all their unions nonstop. Like, these are companies that are that have a long track record of trying to exploit, to whatever degree the world of people will accept, workers, so that their CEOs and their shareholders make as much money as humanly possible. And the longer we kind of look away from that and go, oh, that's just an anomaly and not becoming the pattern of the way in which we've set up our capitalist society, the longer we are sort of unaware of the shift that's happened, which used to be, you're going to be middle class, but you can always dream about being rich, and that might happen, to you should just start dreaming about being middle class, because that's now the dream. Like, for millennials, that's the fucking dream, is like,
maybe, inshallah, I could be middle class.
A fantasy. Maybe you will one day pay off your house,
own a home.
If you with your 8.5, 7.5 interest rate with a bank. And who among us has $200,000, $300,000 to put down in California on a house? Very, 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 very few. So now we're fantasizing about middle, and we slip there so quickly without even asking, because we had no example of it. There's so many people who, like, our parents bought houses and paid it off for 30 years, and that amount of time that takes is so long, we didn't realize that we're 10 years behind, 15 years behind, 20 years behind. Like there is a massive shift in the ability to even function in society. And we're so untrained in our education system about 401ks and retirement and how to do your taxes and all these things that by the time we realize how badly we got fucked, we're 60 years old and we can't, and now we're just working until we drop. And so there's a lot of awareness we have to just build about where are we at now versus the generation before versus the generation before? And what are the reasons that we've gotten to this place? And a lot of it is this unbelievable wealth that we've allowed to gather in very small, in very singular pockets.